Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. In this session, we want to discuss about the marginal productivity condition. To start the discussion, let's first look at the two conditions or the two rules that firms can use in order to maximize profit. The first rule that I believe very common to many of us is the marginal cost, marginal revenue condition, where using this rule, we can identify the profit maximizing output level for a firm. And the second rule that we have established earlier is the rule that the firm can use in order to decide on the hiring workers. That is the value of marginal product of worker must equal the wage rate. These two rules are identical in the sense that the first rule would tell the firm on the profit maximizing output level to produce and also the price level for that profit maximizing output. On the other hand, for the second rule, this rule is important in guiding the firm to minimize the cost. In particular, this is due to the fact that labor is inputs to the firm, so hiring labor or worker would involve costs. In order to maximize profit, the firm needs to minimize the cost. And in doing that, the rule here would help the firm to know the optimal level of workers to be hired. Ultimately, both rules would guide the firm to identify the profit maximizing output level. Because for the second rule here, hiring certain number of workers would produce certain number of outputs. Using the second rule here, that would lead the firm to hire the optimal number of workers to produce the optimal number of output. Going back to the first rule, just to recall this diagram, remember that our firm operates in a competitive product market. So in this diagram, we can identify the firm's output decision. The vertical axis measure the cost and price level in terms of dollar, and the horizontal axis measure the level of output. So we assume that price is given by the market. This firm is a price taker. In this case, we know that from microeconomic study, price is equal to marginal revenue for a perfectly competitive firm. And the first rule that we have seen earlier states that to identify the profit maximizing output, marginal revenue must equal to marginal cost. This condition, marginal revenue, marginal cost must equal to marginal revenue. And this is the typical marginal cost curve. And over here, this is demand curve for the firm. And that's also give us the price level and also indicates the marginal revenue level. This is the point. This is the point where marginal cost equal to marginal revenue, and over here we get Q star as the profit maximizing output level to be produced by the firm, and the firm would then charge P as the price level. Knowing this output level, the next question that the firm needs to find answer is how to produce Q star. The second rule here is the important rule for the firm to decide on how many number of workers to be hired in order to produce Q star, where the value of marginal product of worker must equal to the wage rate. And this is also known as the marginal productivity condition. Over here, we need to establish the argument that the profit maximizing condition based on marginal cost equal to marginal revenue and the marginal productivity conditions, the two conditions are actually identical. Why identical? Because ultimately, both rules are there to identify Q star. Therefore, the two rules are similar or identical in that aspect, that is to identify Q star. So, in order to establish further that claim, say that the marginal product of worker is equal to 5. This means that it takes 1/5 of worker to produce an additional unit of output. As indicated here, one additional worker would produce 5 outputs, and therefore, in order to know how many workers it takes to produce one additional output, it's just a flip of the above where we have 1/5 of worker it takes to produce an additional unit of output. So if one additional worker produces MPE output level, then 1 over MPE worker will produce one extra unit of output. So this is from the above understanding. And that understanding is represented here. MPE is marginal product of worker, 1 over MPE, therefore will produce an extra unit of output. With that understanding, therefore, we can say that the cost of producing one extra unit of output is given by the marginal cost equal to W, the wage rate, times the amount of worker that it takes. Hence, the wage rate times 1 over MPE, because this one tells us the unit of worker it takes to produce that one additional output. Since a profit maximizing condition is that marginal cost must equal to marginal revenue, but here marginal revenue is replaced by price in the context of a pure competition, then we can rewrite the above expression as below. Now we replace marginal cost with this expression, and this marginal cost expression, this is marginal cost expressed in this term now, is equal to marginal revenue, which is equal to P. And we rearrange this expression where we want to only leave W on the left side of the equation. Rearrange the above will give us W equal to price times marginal product of worker. And this is actually the marginal productivity condition. This is therefore the rule that we use in identifying the optimal number of worker to produce Q star. So what we have proven here is that the two rules are identical. We start by identifying the marginal cost, marginal revenue conditions, and from there on we work out to this second rule, the marginal productivity conditions. The conclusions of the exercise therefore tells us that the question on when to stop producing should equal to when to stop hiring. So these two rules are therefore identical in that context. We have seen the marginal productivity conditions. There are some criticism of marginal productivity conditions. It is not popular. I think many of you perhaps only learn about it in labor economics class. When we learn microeconomics on theory of firm, we only discuss the marginal cost equal to marginal revenue rule. Why this rule is not popular? The following are some common criticism. First, the theory bears little relation to the way that employers make hiring decision. Theoretically speaking, the rule is plausible from our earlier discussion. Nonetheless, the HR department, when they want to decide how many workers to hire or how many workers to lay off, there are many other considerations that come to play. This rule, if there is any consideration at all, maybe the last thing they will look at. So in terms of the practicality, it is not really there in the case of hiring decision. Another criticism of the rule is that the assumptions of the theory are not very realistic, in particular to assume that all workers are identical or similar in terms of their productivity. That's quite a stretch. In reality, we learn that, and we know also that workers, each of them are very unique in their own ways. Nonetheless, when labor economists observe the behavior of firms in hiring or laying off workers, it seems that employers act as if they know the implications of the marginal productivity theory. And from that observations where we can establish the marginal productivity theory. I think that's all about the marginal productivity conditions. Remember, the key rule that we have learned in the discussion is for a firm to hire or lay off worker, the marginal productivity condition states that the value of marginal product of worker must equal to the wage rate. I think that's all for this session. Thank you.